Thanks for joining, everyone. Welcome, welcome, whether in Zoom or in one of the many, many live streams that we have going. Welcome to our first global climate strike of 2021. I can't believe this is happening. We are striking all over the world. The international theme is no more empty promises. All over the world, people are standing up and saying enough with the empty promises. In the United States, we're applying it to President Biden and his Build Back a Better plan, making sure that he does not even let those become empty promises. Coupled with the fact that we need a green recovery, we're here today demanding that we build back green, but then also engaging on how we can all do our part in that, because even if President Biden enacts every single one of his policies, that does not mean that things are actually changing in our community, because there are so many actors in between that most people don't even know about. So I'm going to leave all of the actual details to our rally speakers, but I just want to let you guys know why it's so important that we all engage and figure out who are the actors in our community that are actually make a difference on how these things get enacted in our community, and why we need to get engaged as well. So today is not only supposed to be listening to these things, but then also a place for people to actually come and brainstorm and talk about the topics that they think are important for them and how they can act on those. So we've got an entire day of actions while we're waiting for people to trickle in on all the different streams and Zooms. Head on over to fridaysforfutureusa.org to look at our program and see where you would like to plug in. Right now we're in the rally part. We've already striked together for 2 hours. We had an amazing roundtable with MAPA activists who kind of told us their perspective and how different the world is in other places that we really need to be cognizant of. So head on over to the website to take a look at the program, because we're going to get fired up by these amazing rally speakers, and then we're going to dive straight into breakout rooms to take all that energy and all that activism and figure out how we can apply those to the topics that are important to us and how we can actually engage with them. So the program and all the breakout rooms that are going to be happening right after this rally, everything's on the website. Go check it out. While you're there, look at all of our amazing partners that made today possible. There are so many wonderful organizations out there. And we have a calendar with all kinds of upcoming events from all these partners. So plenty of ways for you to plug in and find the way that you would like to get involved. So I think we're giving people a little bit of time to trickle in, but I honestly can't wait. So I think we're just going to dive straight in. I want to hear from all the amazing speakers that we've got lined up for today. So if you're just tuning in, welcome to our first global climate strike of 2021, and we are just going to go straight over to our speakers. So our first one is Kevin. He is the executive director of One Up Action. One Up Action is built by a group of powerful intersectional youth advocates who realized that just participating in climate strikes, rallies, and legislative advocacy just wasn't enough to solve the climate crisis. In order to see true impact, we must take our energy to mass mobilize and complement it with local direct action. So I cannot wait to hear what Kevin has to say, since encouraging and enabling local actions is such a fundamental reason of why we are here today. So Kevin, over to you.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. I just want to begin thanking all the activists that are fighting all around the world for justice, not only climate justice, but for all social justice issues. I also want to take this time to recognize the land that I'm living on, which is the Tongva and Chumash lands. Today, I will be speaking on activism and the injustices that are happening in my state and communities. In my state, over 5 million Californians live within 1 mile of an active oil or gas well. And that of my city, Los Angeles, is home to the largest urban oil field in North America. We must fight the fossil fuel corporations that are responsible for perpetrating the climate crisis. The science behind the health impacts of the chemicals and emissions from fossil fuels production on our bodies is clear. It causes a host of health impacts, including cancer, premature mortality, asthma, and other respiratory issues. The science is also clear that oil spills, leaks, and injections can contaminate soil and water and can harm the ecosystems that we all depend on, as well as the wildlife that inhabits those lands. Communities of color and low-income communities are most severely impacted and disproportionately impacted by oil drilling all around our nation, not just in California, Politicians don't seem to get it. World leaders don't seem to get it. Institutions that are supposed to be solving the climate crisis don't seem to get it. Our future matters, and we won't, back down until the government starts prioritizing our lives over their wallets. I strike because the air pollution in LA puts my friends, family at a higher risk. I strike because fires seem to be constantly raging far too close to my home. We do not want to, we don't take our future lightly, and we don't want to. We know what we want. We want real climate action. World leaders and politicians have made many promises to take real action on the climate crisis. In the last one, in the last first year. Since then, their actions, have only been performative. Instead of fulfilling those promises, they have approved fracking permits after fracking permits, lining their own wallets at the expense of human life. They have not acted on the promises that they have made to us to take climate action. Their inaction is injustice, and we will remember their broken promises. They need to take responsibility for the mess that they made. Politicians can't keep expecting us as young people to clean up their messes. Now, this year marks my 10th year advocating and on behalf of my community and the planet. And I, like many others, consider our advocacy and activism to be a form of a survival tool, not as a hobby, not as a passion, and nor as a choice, but a survival tool, because we know that our communities are being impacted the most. Environmental injustice occurs in a racialized context, both in practice and policy. It is the communities of color that are facing the brunt effects of the climate crisis. That is why we all must be intersectional with our activism and be intersectional environmentalists and climate justice activists, which gives, intersectional environmentalism and intersectional advocacy gives people a more holistic understanding of all social justice issues. So rather than everyone fighting for one thing, women's rights or environmentalism or even civil rights, it serves as a framework and reminder of how we are all fighting the same systems of oppression, therefore encouraging us all to fight alongside one another for justice, and seeing and looking at all of the issues as one, because we have to connect every single issue in order to fight it. We can't stay silent on the injustices that are happening. We can't be apolitical to this crisis, because that will only make things worse. Just as we make overt racism socially unacceptable, we must make covert racism also socially unacceptable. White supremacy is one of the root causes of the climate crisis. And until we dismantle this system of oppression within our organizing spaces and within our solutions, also while fighting the other systems of oppression, both internally and externally, we won't be able to get true justice for communities all around the world. I just want to thank the Fridays for Future organizers for inviting me to speak. And I, hope everyone is enjoying their day and, striking. And I just, again, want to thank all the social justice advocates and intersectional climate justice advocates as well that are fighting all around the world on behalf of their communities and the planet. So thank you for inviting me to speak today.
Thank you, Kevin. Climate justice is social justice. And so representing the communities who have led this fight from the beginning is so critical to achieving like real lasting justice. So, and that requires intersectionality. So thank you so much for all that you do, truly. Thank you. We're going to move straight on to Isabella. She's the co-founder of Polluters Out. Polluters Out was founded due to what many call the failure of COP25. COP stands for Conference of the Parties. It's an international body for nations to come together to talk about climate and like have their climate discussions. This failure is a symptom of much greater and prolonged issues in which they say the fossil fuel industry controls every aspect of society, from indigenous lands, governments, banks, universities, and climate negotiations. So, especially with the COP26 on the horizon and President Biden's upcoming Earth Day US Climate Summit, we need to demand action at home and on a global scale. So, Isabella, let us have it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Isabella Falahi, and I'm a 17-year-old climate activist from Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm the co-founder for Polluters Out, an international coalition for youth climate organizations that is dedicated to removing the fossil fuel industry's influence on our governments, banks, lands, universities, and climate negotiations. For decades, the fossil fuel industry, US politicians, and world leaders have worked hand in hand to reap profits with no regard for our planet or people. They have built pipelines through indigenous lands, have waged wars and displaced millions to control oil supply, gotten a slap on the wrist for leaving the floors of oceans and forests around the world drenched in their products, received millions of dollars in bailouts during a pandemic while families were left to fend for themselves. And when hurricanes and wildfires ripped apart the foundations of communities from sea to shining sea, the money and support so quickly given to Shell, Exxon, BP, and Chevron suddenly vanished. And like a good sidekick, the leaders and nations of the world helped to cover up the fossil fuel industry's harms. They try to hide and silence the low-income communities and people of color who have breathed in the toxic debris from their profit-reaping production and of cancer and asthma. They turn their heads on those who are begging for their houses to be repaired, for their electrical grids to be back up and running, from Puerto Rico to Texas. But it's easier for them to avoid an admission of guilt when you ignore an issue in its entirety. Or maybe when they do get caught after spilling crude oil in an indigenous community's rivers, leaving the children with rashes, do they give a half-assed apology? And when the science became known that their industry was causing global catastrophe, Exxon's henchmen, US politicians, helped hide and cover up the data. What we are witnessing is what will be known in years to come as the world's most elaborate and drawn-out method of how to get away with murder. Their most effective method at hiding the body is hiding in plain sight, with conferences like the United Nations Conference of the Parties. For decades, the world's leaders have come together to formulate what they deem as effective climate policy. However, the red carpet is not just rolled out for prime ministers and presidents, but for fossil fuel executives. In fact, the fossil fuel industry doesn't just take part in the conference, they fund the entire thing. So when the gavel is banged at the end of the conference and the delegates and secretariats join hands in celebration, they walk away with agreements that can never be fulfilled at their root. International policies like the Paris Agreement prove to be insufficient. They leave room for broken promises because they're not even binding. In fact, it's more so a formal piece of paper with flowery rhetoric and ideas of what a country would like to do. It's a form of manipulation where we are told to believe that with this plan, everything will be okay. We can pack up our posters and megaphones and go home because the adults have finally done the job. However, it's destined to fail from the beginning because the fossil fuel industry was the puppet master the whole time. They have no limitations on their industry and are free to continue to go about business as usual. And all it took was one check written to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, our presidents and prime ministers, representatives, senators, members of parliament, and the list continues. With COP26 being postponed in 2020 due to COVID-19, we have even less time to develop real binding agreements to keep us under 1.5 degrees. This year, the 26th annual Conference of the Parties will be taking place in Glasgow, Scotland. However, it's being funded by Scottish Power, an Iberdrola subsidiary. For those of you that don't know what Iberdrola is, it's one of Europe's largest oil and gas companies. We don't have time for another 30 years worth of failed conferences, failed solutions, and tacky red carpet shots of world leaders celebrating insufficient policies hand in hand with the leaders of the industry that started the crisis that we're trying to solve. This is why Polluters Out is demanding that we divest from COP and the United Nations process. Real solutions will not be developed by those in suits who are too spineless and lack the principles required to turn away a blank check for a vision of a livable world. Real solutions will be created and formed by the people, the youth, and communities who have for too long faced the effects of what happens when there is no change. For 30 years, broken promises have left the global South, Black, Brown, Indigenous, low-income communities to pick up the pieces of inaction, to pick up the debris of their homes that were ripped apart by typhoons or burned down by fires. Now is the time to divest from COP. So join us at Polluters Out in waging a war against the fossil fuel industry, because these final 9 years to combat climate change, we are going to have to fight back and fight hard together. And now more than ever, it's important to remember that white supremacy is the root cause of the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabella. Thank you for so much truth. Tackling the fossil fuel industry is critical to achieve climate action, and the divestment movement is playing such an important role in the fight for climate. So thank you for all that you do. And staying with Polluters Out, next up we've got Aisha, who's also co-founder of Polluters Out and an ED of Student Affairs at Fossil Free University. That's a school of thought and school for action to get polluters out of government, out of Indigenous lands, out of our future, and out of our lives. I believe you're going to be sharing your wisdom in a different format with us today, so I can't wait. The stage is yours, Aisha.
I'm so happy to be here. Before I share my poetry, I'd like to say some words. Around 1.5 years ago, more than 7.6 million of us got out on the streets and we said enough is enough. I was brought to my knees on September 20th, 2019. I had so much hope. I thought to myself, if this is the last thing I ever do, I will be content with myself. One point or another, all of the organizers in the United States, in New York City, we cried because we thought maybe this was a turning point. But unfortunately, I speak to you with great disappointment today, and the message is the same. We are still headed towards destruction, towards extinction. This is our last chance. Time and nature will not wait for us to get our act together. Like Isabella said, COP26 is around the corner. We cannot have another drop of oil influencing whether we get to live or die. That's what no more empty promises means. How are we supposed to save humanity when we've given the villain a pen to write the ending? Let us acknowledge that white supremacy is in fact one of the root causes of the climate crisis, and we must dismantle it and all systems of oppression, including the fossil fuel industry. I have a poem here that I wrote after the September 20th protests, after the UN conference, and then and COP25 in Spain. And I share it with you today because I believe that storytelling and sharing art is a very vital component of revolution. It's a very vital component of movement building, and it's what touches hearts. This is called After Extinction. We spoke on the 11th, your face all wet, broken default, between this lens and these orientations and that liberty, you wilt. When the immediate effective loss of life talks to me in the AM, I find you sitting on the second stair of our 2-story home with a field manual in your hands. You don't read it, you play with paper in your mouth, struck by the absolute again. Gray, sorry. Is it wartime? Is it wartime again, little brother? Will you be suspended abroad or at home? Can you hide somewhere until June? I try not to be overwhelmed, but I know all the unluckies by face and some by name. I never wanted to survive the amusing arrangements of nature, everybody's incandescent inability to see magic. I never wanted to stop seeing the magic. Vaporless and personal, ours is a vulnerable storyline. There is no setting because the vegetation and river run and trees and buildings and ordinary characters inside the itchy buildings have disappeared. There is no theme, but waves of empty scapes and underside bellies, all extraordinary, ruptured, and our children never meet. No one sticks their dirty fingers into peanut butter jars or fights over the remote control. Monopoly boards never fly to meet the ground. No one spills coffee over their favorite pants. Deep appetites do not go unfulfilled, so no one becomes victim to the condition of truth, and no one is lost enough to compose music or ask, "Oh Lord, how come I born here?" And God never gets to stand us up. The grass never stretches upwards with the lolling cocoons, and the ants do not go marching 2 by 2. No one is there to watch the sun seep nectar into sapphire, no precious chirping or shivering of feathered bodies. Jeremiah never wails, Elijah never sobs, Jesus never weeps. No one really cares. This is recent, these underlying beliefs. The earth as dead matter, the soil as commodity, the land as property, and that the long-time horizons can be altered. And I suppose that is why compromise feels like sin. This pale blue dot on this dark surface of skin, these various networks of heartbeats and their various problems gone, completely gone. No chance to show off their resilience. The peace deal never comes, and no one is there to lament us now that we are gone. That was it.
Wow, thank you. I have goosebumps, really. I thought I was about to cry there for a little bit. Art truly is at the heart of the climate movement and expresses in such a different, visceral way. Thank you. What a beautiful poem, and the way that you framed it at the beginning. Thank you. Remembering who we are fighting for and our communities is why we're in this fight. So thank you. Next up, we have Miriam. She is the president of a newly formed organization called Nourish Our Earth. Nourish Our Earth focuses on climate change and healthy living, and she uses her social media to send messages of positivity and activism across the globe. She's a freshman high schooler from New Jersey, involved in many social and humanitarian activities. So, Miriam, the stage is yours.
Hello everyone, I am Mariam Masood. I'm a freshman in high school, and thank you so much, Kat, for giving that beautiful introduction. I start by the name of Almighty, the creator of all that exists. The effects of climate change are felt all across the globe, from vanishing landmasses at Maldives to increased tropical storms here in the US. We need everyone, regardless of color, gender, nationality, or geographical region, to contribute. We are running against the clock to make a difference. So today I will talk about diversity and inclusiveness for climate change. And let's make sure there is no empty talk on this matter, no more empty promises. By diversity, I mean including everyone from all aspects of life. I mean inclusiveness, regardless of race, religion, or ethnicity. This is hard to believe, that empowering women and girls in developing countries ranked second among 76 solutions for curbing global warming to 2 degrees Celsius. It is hard to believe that girls' education and proper family planning can contribute to reduce carbon by 85 gigatons by 2050. But how does that work? The math is simple. It is by educating women and girls of the developing countries. We, the youth, are frontline communities who did not create this crisis, but feel the brunt of its impacts. Yet we won't be scared. We won't sit down idle and do nothing. We will stand up and reach out to every corner of this earth. And we will wake our fellow brothers and sisters, and we will tell them that climate crisis is real. Inaction will bite us heavily. It will harm my family, my friends, my neighbors, and all of you. So for my share, on behalf of Nourish Our Earth, I will do my best, and here are my priorities. I will work to influence the generations to come just by doing simple activities that are aligned to impact the environment positively. Small things like bike rides or awareness campaigns. I will act in family first and then bring impact globally. For example, on my shows, I can do a talk to the parents of some of my followers to aware, to commit, and to act. I will arrange competitions on my social media platforms, things like arts and crafts focusing on environment and hunger. At the end, our organization, Nourish Our Earth's priorities are mapped with the Green New Deal. By campaigning healthy food in school and homes, by carbon neutral awareness campaigns. Oh, our leaders, can you hear us? It is not too late to act upon. And with that, I will finish my talk. Thank you so much again, Kat and Liv, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to speak here alongside some really inspiring speakers. I really am very honored. Together we nourish, so we flourish. Thank you again.
Thank you, Miriam. It is so exciting to see young people taking on such leadership roles. After all, that is what Fridays for Future is all about. So we appreciate your advocacy and work to make this world a better place. Next up, we have Wally. He's the political campaigns coordinator with the Sunrise Movement. For those who don't know Sunrise, it's a youth movement to stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process. They're building an army of young people to make climate change an urgent priority across America, and the corrupting influence of fossil fuel executives on our politics, and elect leaders who stand up for the health and well-being of all people. So with that, Wally, it's all you.
Thanks, Kat. Wow, I'm so excited to be here. Oh man, this is like amazing to be with such passionate people working to stop climate change. My name is Wallace, he, they pronouns. I'm from beautiful Gainesville, Florida. Go Gators. If you're not a football fan, it's okay. So Sunrise Movement, like Kat said, is a youth organization working to stop climate change. We absolutely want to tackle the climate change at the scale that justice and science demands. Our North Star is the Green New Deal. We believe that the Green New Deal is our solution to fighting the climate change by putting millions of people to work fighting the climate catastrophe. Yeah, I just want to talk about a little bit of the story of Sunrise, right? When we were thinking about, we were looking at the movement ecosystem on climate, and we saw that, there weren't that many groups like really solving this issue, really organizing people to implement strategy to gain policies on the federal and local level. And young people honestly got tired, and there were a passionate, group of people, just like yourselves in this Zoom chat, who decided to make a difference, who decided that they wanted to make a change. So Sunrise was formed, and we wanted to make climate change matter. And the way we did that was by talking to politicians and asking them not to take any money from fossil fuel companies. It would seem like that would be an easy task, but when you have years and years and decades long entrenched money in politics, it became a task. But we started showing up at town halls, we started organizing our communities, and we got more and more people to not take any money from fossil fuel companies. And that was young people, right? Teenagers, people in their early and mid 20s that did that. And then when the Green New Deal was introduced, when young people sat in Nancy Pelosi's office with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Green New Deal was the blueprint that we were organizing around. And when the caucus came and we were asking people who wanted our votes, wanted our support to become the president of the United States, we asked them what was their plan to attack climate change. And some people didn't even have a plan, right? Crazy to think, but we made it matter. Young people made it matter, right? Biden was not our first choice. I have to say straight up, Probably wasn't your first choice, probably not a lot of people's first choice. But what happened was when Biden won the nomination, he saw that young people were showing up to his town halls. They were showing up across the country, following him around, asking what his plan was for climate. And what did he do? Well, he was like, these young people keep following me around. Let's invite them to talk about what their concerns are. And he created the Bernie Biden Unity Task Force. And he had people from Sunrise Movement on that task force, and he listened to our concerns. And out of that, we've got a bunch of executive actions in the first days of his administration, stopping leases of drilling on public lands, creating the Climate Conservation Corps, and so many others, right? Rolling back Trump's terrible climate executive actions. And that happened because of organizing from young people. We pushed for Deb Haaland to be the Secretary for Interior. And that was a battle. And she got nominated and just like now confirmed, which is like a historic moment for our country and a huge win for our movement. And young people did that with the help of our Indigenous partners and partners all over the movement ecology. Young people did that. And now what we're seeing now is a moment for young people to step up into their power, to take leadership where the void of leadership is now. There's like a vacuum of leadership. We now again see that, adults aren't stepping up. And, it seems like sometimes it's unfair that, people in their teens, young people have to like take up leadership. But when young people stand up and organize, we win. We've seen it. We continue to see it. And if we keep mobilizing, we'll win a Green New Deal. Right now, we're seeing some of the most devastating effects of climate change across the country. I was in Iowa when derecho hit. It was a huge land hurricane in the middle of the Midwest. It was so strange. I remember where I was. I was in a coffee shop, and then all of a sudden I was looking at my phone and I saw like friends post about like the storm with all the rain and all the wind, and it didn't hit where we were, but all of a sudden you heard tornado sirens in the background. And then all of a sudden you saw like this like huge amount of rain just come out of the sky, and you hear howling winds in the background, and it was scary. And people's power went out for like weeks, and then you saw branches on the ground and for like months. And the reason why that happened is because the government wasn't prepared for situations like that. And we're going to continue to see things like that. We saw it in Texas, where the power grid was not able to sustain the effects of climate change. And we saw people were cold, we saw people were hungry, and their local officials were not prepared. We saw their elected officials blame solar panels and windmills for their political failures, deflecting from any responsibility for their inactions. And we also saw Ted Cruz, for some reason, thought it was a good idea to go to Cancun, and then threw his daughter under the bus, saying she's the reason why he went. That's failed leadership. And now we see Democrats right now in Congress having this agenda and having no way to pass it because they're refusing to abolish this archaic rule called the filibuster to pass legislation that we know our communities need. We need voter rights. We need sustainable healthcare. We need a solution to climate change. And if we cannot figure out a way to abolish this filibuster, the Democrats are choosing failure, and we cannot allow them to choose failure. Young people, we need to mobilize. We need to stand up because we know what our community needs. We know we need a Green New Deal. We know we cannot allow Mitch McConnell and his sympathized, his insurrectionist sympathizing colleagues to dictate the control of this administration. We can't allow that to happen, because if we do allow that to happen, we might be in the minority for years and years. And we know it's only going to get worse from Trump. Trump enabled all these people to do the worst things that we could have possibly imagined. We can't do that. So we have to pressure the administration to be bold, to be brave in the face of adversity. Right now, it's really scary, but it's scary for us. There's so much uncertainty in the world, so much, you know, inequality. On top of that, climate anxiety. And we're taking the streets. We saw last summer how young people were taking the streets. The only thing that, you know, honestly, the administration should be like glad that like we're not able to take the streets, because we would be right now on the steps of power right now, pressuring them to use their power for good. And that's what we see in this moment. We need to continue to fight the good fight. We need to continue to mobilize for a Green New Deal, because we know our generation needs solution to climate change. And if we can't get that, it's game over. And if the Democrats can't, if they can't get it together, they're choosing failure, and we can't allow that to happen.
Thank you, Wally. You always bring so much of your personal story with you. It always makes it so much different the way that you tell it. Because policy plays a critical role in pursuing and achieving climate and social justice, and we just need to get more young people into policy. We must demand space at the decision-making tables, and thank you for leading that charge. Next, we have Sydney. She's the Director of International Policy at Care About Climate. Care About Climate builds capacity for young people around the world to fight the climate crisis and create a just, equitable future. They advocate for climate policy that centers around accountability, gender justice, intergenerational equity, and more. And especially lately, we've been shown time and time again that the climate crisis is at the intersection of so many of these issues. So that can feel so overwhelming, and yet we have to tackle these things together, and we cannot see them as separate issues. So Sydney, I can't wait to hear what you have to say on any of these topics.
Hi, everyone. So glad to be here with you all today, and climate strikers across the country and world. My name is Sydney Welter, and I direct the policy team at Care About Climate. Care About Climate is a volunteer-led international nonprofit that works towards just climate policy and solutions, including gender equality and opportunities for young people. And that's why we're all here today, isn't it? To build power as young people working towards climate action. I live in Colorado, where we are currently experiencing one of the worst avalanche seasons ever. This is following from our worst ever wildfire season, which added to already poor air quality across the state. Due to discriminatory planning, these effects of air pollution are worst felt by communities of color and low-income communities. We know these conditions will become more frequent and more severe as the planet continues to warm. And as a young person, I worry about the livability of our communities a decade from now. That's just a look into my state, one story. Young people across the US and across the world are bearing the brunt of COVID-19, climate change, and other intersecting crises. We need a livable future for ourselves and future generations with just and equitable climate solutions so that all communities can thrive. It's time to build back green through ambitious climate policy, education, training, good paying job opportunities in clean energy, and support to the communities most impacted by this crisis. Through this, I have a lot of hope as we're all working to recover from COVID-19 and have this new administration and Congress. We have a lot of opportunities to make critical changes for environmental justice. Young voters turned out in record numbers in the past election, and young people too young to vote organized for the election as well. And our officials have a mandate now to address the issues we care about. We can hold them to account for no more broken promises. Today, I want to highlight that the US is set to release its new Nationally Determined Contribution, or NDC, very soon. The US NDC is our national climate pledge to meet Paris Agreement goals. The US needs to take responsibility and commit to its fair share of global emissions reductions if we hope to stay below 1.5 degrees. But climate action is more than just a number. The percentage of emissions reduced must be high, and the transition from fossil fuels must be just. Even the Paris Agreement, which is not enough alone, states that countries should consider their obligations on human rights, health, intergenerational equity, and more. Young people are already leading the way on climate action. We must call on the new administration to, in this new NDC pledge, lay out an actual actionable plan for opportunities for young people to achieve intergenerational equity. Fund youth-led climate projects. Give all young people access, actual, able to be afforded access to education, including environmental education. Train and employ young people in green infrastructure, climate science, climate policy, clean energy jobs. Climate action is more than just a number. The US and its new NDC must commit to and strongly follow through on environmental justice efforts. The US government needs to center Black, Indigenous, people of color in policy planning and decision-making. It needs to provide pathways for women and girls who are still severely underrepresented in government. It needs to address economic inequities, providing opportunities for good-paying jobs in the transition to fossil fuels and funding to the communities most impacted by pollution. And to do our true fair share, we also need to give funding to the countries we have harmed through our policies. We have a lot to do, but young people are already at work. I invite all of you here today to join us in these efforts. Tell the new administration that NDC is not just a number. Call on the administration through striking, through your social media, through any platform you have, and say it's time to build back green. We need justice and equity, and to be people-driven in our NDC and all of our climate pledges. Together as young people, we are going to ensure that there are no more broken promises. We're going to build not just a livable, but a thriving future for all. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you for especially all the clear to-dos. I think that is absolutely great. That's what we're here for today, is to find out explicitly how we can all plug in and what it is that we need to look for. And because it's good to take that meta level and kind of see what we need to change, but then figuring out how we actually do that and implement that, that's also another ballgame. So thank you for all those explicit to-dos, and especially about how we need to take the global perspective in the US to own up to like our outsized impact on the rest of the world. Absolutely, thank you. Next up, we have Carrie Ann. She's the Impact Team Market Leader at Common Energy. The Impact Team is a youth collective of clean energy advocates working in our communities to connect people to equitable, free, renewable energy. I've only talked to Carrie Ann a few times, but every time I hop off that Zoom with her, I've learned so many things that I didn't even know that I didn't know, that I'm just super psyched, and I suspect this time it's not going to be any different. So Carrie Ann, I can't wait to learn more.
Thanks for that, Kat. Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Carrie Ann. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm joining you all from upstate New York on Mohican, Muncie, and Lenape land. And I'm speaking, as Kat said, on behalf of the Common Energy Impact Team. I have a little bit of a different spiel for you all, and it involves quite a bit of hope, because I'm intending to tell you about some renewable energy programs you probably don't know about that are taking a lot of action on something that so many of the amazing speakers have already touched on, which is fossil fuels and their control over, polluting our planet. So you may have heard that the clean energy economy is promising 1 million new jobs by 2030 and carbon-free electricity by 2035. But what you probably haven't heard about is the Impact Team, which is already on the way to making those things happen. The Impact Team, as Kat said, is a youth-centered collective that pays young people to advocate for local renewable energy development. We were founded during the pandemic, less than a year old now, and in those 10 months, we've gone from 2 states to 9. That's a lot of expansion. Our team is now working across New York, Massachusetts, Maryland, New Jersey, Maine, Rhode Island, Minnesota, Illinois, and Oregon. We're expanding in more states all the time, which is super exciting as a new org. So what do? The Impact Team helps our communities divest from fossil fuels on a personal level by enabling anyone who uses electricity to redirect their monthly utility bill to support solar energy instead of fossil fuels. This program is called Community Solar. Our work is made possible by state policies called Renewable Energy Portfolio Standards, which some of you may have heard of before. It's like when New York says we want 70% renewable energy by 2030. That's a portfolio standard. That's a goal that they set. So these specific goals incentivize clean energy to enter the electricity grid, and that's what allows us to do community solar. As an organization, we support local solar farms to be built and connected to the existing utility grid, enabling states to reach for these goals. And thanks to state incentives, every time we turn on a solar panel and we add 5 kilowatt hours of clean energy from that solar panel to the electrical grid, 5 kilowatt hours of fossil fuels have to be shut off. So we're literally divesting fossil fuels, taking their income and reinvesting it in community solar farms in our local communities. I think that's just so exciting and cool, and like, it's awesome. So you're probably like, what? Why haven't I heard about this? It's a state supported thing. I don't know how many of you read your state legislation, but you probably haven't updated it on a while. And this is part of a state program. And because it's a state program, it's absolutely free. It's free to sign up for community solar. It's free to cancel at any time. There are no subscription fees, and anyone with an electricity bill can sign up for community solar. Which makes it an equitable opportunity for communities across the country to connect to renewable energy without needing to finance things or put things on their homes. I'm talking like apartments can sign up, houses can sign up, like buildings with lots of apartments in them can sign up, anybody. There are even specific state programs designed for low income and more affected communities to get access to renewable energy, and like specifically for them. So these state programs enabling clean energy, it's super great. So our objective on the impact team is to give youth an opportunity to make an impact and be compensated for it. Within the last year, we've gone from just an idea to providing 200 plus remote jobs to students across the country. And as a team, we've converted over 700 homes to renewable energy, which over the lifetime of our solar farms, which is about 20 years, is expected to prevent 27 million pounds of CO2. And that's just the impact team. Common Energy as a whole is providing over 10,000 homes renewable energy across the country. Cool. So Biden might be signing executive orders in the Oval Office, but the impact team is taking executive action on the ground in our communities where it matters most. If you are passionate about being a part of the Green Revolution, definitely consider joining our team and making an impact with us. We're actually looking to hire over 500 people for this summer in all of those states that I listed. So if you're interested in getting paid to do, renewable energy advocacy, hit me up. And if you want to learn more about the energy sector in general, the impact team is going to be hosting a breakout room. We're going to talk more about those renewable portfolio standards, what community solar is, and take hold of our energy system, which, as many of the amazing speakers have already said, fossil fuels have had control of for far too long. So yeah, check us out on Instagram. I'll put the handle in our link. And thank you so much for this time today. Thank you to everyone for speaking.
Wow, thank you so much for all this information. Once again, I did not know so much of that. And it is so wild to me that we don't know these things and that it is so hard for us to get this information. Just like everybody needs to know these things. And I don't know, so thank you for spreading all the wisdom and information. And I absolutely love the way that you're doing it by like enabling the communities that need it the most. So amazing. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Jamie. She's the co-founder of 0 Hour. 0 Hour is an international youth climate justice movement that organizes mobilizations, educational campaigns, lobby days, summits, strikes, marches, social media campaigns, all of it to demand urgent action on climate change, which is exactly what we need right now. We need everyone to be educated and inspired, because only through that can we achieve the systemic shift that we so desperately need. So Jamie, let us hear how we can change the world.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Hola a todos. My name is Jamie Sarai Margolin, and I'm a 19-year-old climate justice organizer, co-founder of 0 Hour, author of Youth to Power. But what I'm going to talk to you all today is being a plaintiff on the Youth v. Government lawsuit. a lot of times, when we think about fighting for change, we think about doing it through this on the streets or lobbying, and all of that is really great. And all of those actions are definitely needed. But another thing that people often fail to realize is that the destruction of our planet isn't just wrong, it's also illegal. According to the laws of many governments who are the ones actively worsening the climate crisis, they are breaking their own laws. For example, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, those are considered in the United States inalienable in the founding documents. However, we cannot have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness without clean air, clean water, and a livable future. That is why an organization called Our Children's Trust is helping young people like myself sue and hold governments accountable for the destruction of the climate and life on Earth, and we're saying that they're breaking our constitutional rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, not by taking inaction, because I think calling what governments are doing inaction is not accurate, because that would mean that they're doing nothing. They're actively worsening it. And so what they're doing is actively worsening the climate crisis, and that is breaking our constitutional rights. So Our Children's Trust has helped many lawsuits around the country of young people suing governments for climate recovery plans. So we're not suing for damages or money or anything like that, because the damage that's being done is it's priceless. So what we're suing for is a climate recovery plan. I live in New York, but I'm from Washington State. And in Washington State, I'm one of 13 plaintiffs, 13 young people who are suing the state of Washington. We filed the constitutional lawsuit in the beginning of 2018, and it's been going through the courts ever since. What we are saying is that we're saying that the state of Washington, by actively worsening the climate crisis, by actively causing environmental destruction, by actively approving new fossil fuel infrastructure, giving the fossil fuel industry the ability to keep polluting and to keep destroying the environment for future Washingtonians and all people, that is illegal. And so we are suing them. And basically what has happened is that the courts are trying to throw our lawsuit out. So we are in the appeals process where we are fighting back, and we're telling the court that, no, you need to listen to us. This is serious, and the governments are breaking the law. And what we're suing for is we need a court-mandated climate recovery plan. And what that would mean is that there is a climate recovery plan made by scientists and communities that is then mandated that the government implement by the court. So then it becomes illegal for them not to implement the climate action. We have to tackle this issue from all of the different lenses. We have to tackle it on the streets, mobilizing, in communities, in every specific facet of life that we can. And that includes in the legal system and in the courts, because a lot of the people in charge are breaking their own laws. So what can you do to help? What can you do to support? Well, if you want to support and follow the Youth v. Gov lawsuits, you can follow at Youth v. Gov on social media, or go to www.youthvgov.com to support young people holding our governments accountable. Now, aside from that, I also wanted to touch upon, while I'm here with you guys, I also wanted to touch upon a different issue other than young people suing our governments, which is important. But I also wanted to talk about Latin America. As you can see behind me, I have some Colombian flags hanging up. My family is from Colombia, South America. My mom is a Colombian immigrant, and Colombia has the highest rates of murders of environmentalists in the entire world. And just because it has the highest rates, though, doesn't mean that it's the only place where environmentalists are regularly getting murdered. In Latin America and in places around the world, environmentalists are being killed for the work that they're doing. And I always find it interesting that, in some places, like where I am, I'm rewarded for the work that we do. And I think a lot of activists in many places are rewarded for the work that's being done. But then there are others who are actively killed for the work that's being done. And I think we have to acknowledge and fight to protect the environmentalists all around the world who are in danger. We have to protect the environment, but we also have to protect the protectors, or defend the defenders of the environment. We have to not forget them, and we have to center the voices of those on the front lines, especially those fighting to protect the Amazon rainforest. A lot of people also overlook the fight to protect the Amazon rainforest because they think of it as just a Latin American issue. Oh, okay, you're Latino, you care about it. But I'm talking about the Amazon rainforest, not just because, oh, I'm Colombian and part of it's in Colombia, so therefore I care. Yes, there is a personal aspect to it, but also because without the green spaces in our world, like the Amazon rainforest, we are not going to survive this climate crisis. The Amazon rainforest and all of the biodiversity in it is a carbon sink. It's helping us solve the climate crisis. And that goes for the rainforests all around the world. They are being deforested at a massive rate because of governments working hand in hand with corporations who are destroying nature and communities that have lived there long before those governments have existed in the name of profit. So we must all stand in solidarity with the activists on the front lines in the Amazon, and the Amazonian defenders are often the activists who are being murdered for their work. And it's important that we stand up for them and we stand in solidarity. So what can you do? I would support Amazon Watch. You can go to @Amazon Watch on social media or go to the Amazon Watch website to see how you can support the environmental defenders in Latin America and those protecting the Amazon rainforest. So those were the two things that I wanted to talk to you all today. Thank you so much to the organizers of this. I know how difficult it is to put on an event, let alone a digital event when everyone is all zoomed out. But I'm so happy that all of you are here and are tuning in. I know that it's easy to get so it feels so lonely when you're not in person with each other, when you're not marching alongside each other. I wish that we could have all been together, because the energy that people get off of each other is truly, I feel like, what makes it so we can keep going. And I know that, I mean, climate anxiety is real, and also the anxiety and stress from the pandemic is real. Combine that plus loneliness, and I know it can be so easy to just feel so like the world is so heavy and just feel so defeated that you don't even want to get up in the morning, and you don't even want to do this work because it's just exhausting. And usually we can combat the exhaustion by being like, okay, well, I'm going to go see my friends at this protest, so it's going to be okay. But now it's just the work. It's just the work and none of the socializing, which makes the work bearable. So to all of you guys struggling with especially mental health during this pandemic and obviously climate anxiety, I just want to say you're not alone. Keep going, and it's going to be okay. And you have a whole community of people who would love to work with you and support you. So thank you so much again, and adios todos. Gracias.
Thank you, Jamie. Wow, even more practical information. So thank you. I hope everyone here is leaving with a little bit of tidbits of something that resonated with them. And Jamie, I wish you all the best of luck. And thank you for dropping those words about community and energy. It is so important. That's why we're trying to build this space so that we can somehow find ways to come back together. And even though we're like in our little Zoom boxes, in our like little apartments, all isolated, we can still find that connection to the community, which is what gives us energy to keep going. So with that, we are going to move right on to the last, to our last amazing speaker today, Nathia. She's the co-founder and art director of 0 Hour. We've already heard from 0 Hour and witnessed the power of art. So Nathia, I don't think I could say anything much better than all the intros from the preceding speakers. So Nathia, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Nadia Nazar. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the co-founder, co-executive director, and art director for 0 Hour. I feel like I've spoken at many different climate demonstrations in the past few years. And even though this isn't a physical demonstration where we're yelling at elected officials or corporations, it feels similar in terms of the outcomes with climate action. As Aisha said earlier, we thought September 20th would be a turning point, but we were met with disappointment. We must continue to organize within our communities and build our relationships. But as long as we're not addressing the root causes of the climate crisis and to the industries constantly exploiting people and the land, we will not achieve a livable planet for all. Systems of oppression, including racism, patriarchy, capitalism, colonialism, and so many more, are not only the root causes of the climate crisis, but they continue to magnify this issue that looms heavily over us. We must hold corporations and the government accountable. So many industries are constantly taking from people, animals, and the land. These include the animal agriculture industry, fast fashion, and of course, fossil fuels. If corporations don't stop churning through fossil fuels, we will not be able to limit the disastrous effects of the climate crisis. And climate change will not only happen in the future, but it's already happening right now. Frontline communities are already facing the repercussions. This isn't something we can save for the future. Action must be taken immediately. I first became frustrated with climate change when learning about how many species are already going endangered and even extinct, even though they weren't the ones to cause this crisis. I had created a deep bond, this friendship with the cat that lives in my house. And this was one of my first relationships that wasn't to someone that was human. And it didn't feel much different in the fact of that though, because I love her so much and that relationship continues to grow. It was devastating though to think of the families that have those loving bonds, that have those connecting souls that were dying, and the families, the friends, the lovers of animals that enjoy this life as we do. And it was really devastating to see that so many are already going endangered and extinct. I continue to fight for her and for other animals that live among us. There are so many things acting against us, and we can continue to call for climate action as we have for years, but we must also listen and uplift those who have been doing the work for generations. Indigenous people, Black people, and other people of color have been calling for the protection of land and people for decades, even centuries. People have been killed for fighting and protecting their homes, the land they inhabit, as Jamie mentioned. We must make sure our solutions include everyone. And not only do they need to include everyone and uplift everyone, but they must be created by Black and Indigenous people, by young people, by older people, by queer people. We need to include everyone, and they need to be the ones that are contributing to the conversations and creating these solutions. So many spaces that create these solutions primarily have white people, and these systems have been built upon another through generations and generations of white supremacy. White supremacy is all around us, as we have seen in so many recent events from a few days ago to centuries ago. White supremacy runs through the cracks of society, moving quickly. We must be strong enough to acknowledge how it moves within us, how it lives and creeps around our households, the way it manifests in our school textbooks, in the design of the benches we sit on, in the borders that separate our communities, in the statues and portraits that sit in Capitol Hill. White supremacy running through the cracks all around us, showing up in different ways that we dismiss until there are dead bodies to count. We cannot let this go on further. We must be bold enough to carry on with love, to embrace the precious life that surrounds us, that lives within us. We are all creators at heart, whether you know it or not. Don't let anyone stop you from creating. Paint, sing your heart out, dance like no one's watching, film what you want, print, keep making things, and allow your creations to take up space, to be political, to be collaborative in order to bring people together. Community will save us as long as we are strong enough to listen and brave enough to speak. We will not let white supremacy continue to conquer us, as white supremacy is the root of the climate crisis, and we must dismantle the system of oppression within our organizing spaces and solutions. Thank you.
Thank you as well for speaking truth. I feel like intersectionality is often a trending word, but it's so important to hear the details and be reminded of what is actually encompassed by this word that can just be easily thrown out as like a token. So thank you for that. I am so fired up and impressed with our lineup of all these speakers, and I cannot thank you enough for coming in. I am energized. I've got concrete things that I want to do now. I've got new things that I want to think about. I have new things that I want to watch out for by myself. I have new things I want to tell my friends about. And so I am ready to hit the streets, but we are actually just going to hit the breakout room. So anybody who's watching this on the lives, come on into the Zoom, go to fridaysforfutureusa.org. You'll find the registration link. You'll get the link in a few seconds, because we are going to go into some amazing breakout rooms now to take all of this information and all of these topics that we just learned learned. And we're gonna put them to actually use. We're not just gonna turn off the webcam and be like, oh yeah, that was great. We are gonna have spaces where you can talk about these topics, where you can find out how you can actually engage with them, and things that you can do when after you leave here today that you can feel like you can actually do. So for anybody not in the Zoom, join us in the Zoom. We're gonna be in an hour of 8 amazing breakout rooms. For anybody who is on the Zoom or is trying to decide whether they want to come on the Zoom, all of the breakout rooms that we have are on the website. We have one on renewables and the energy sector. We have one on eco-anxiety, on environmental education, intergenerational movement building, fast fashion, climate policies, POC and the climate crisis, egotistical Enbridge, stop line 3, and the Earth Bill. So if there's not something there for everybody, so everybody come on in. And a lot of the streams are stopping now. We do have plenty of more lineup, so if you want to just hop on into the Zoom, we'll gladly have you. If not, thank you for watching on the live stream.